A teardrop splashed onto the glowing screen of Rachel Howell's phone, blurring the words that had just shattered her world. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision, but more tears followed, distorting the intimate messages between her husband of 23 years and a woman named Molly. Rachel's trembling fingers scrolled through the exchange, each message cutting deeper than the last. How could this be happening? Her mind struggled to process the betrayal unfolding before her eyes. It had been an ordinary Tuesday evening. Stephen had forgotten his phone on the kitchen counter when he rushed out to pick up takeout for dinner. The device had buzzed repeatedly, drawing Rachel's attention. She wasn't the type to snoop, but when she saw multiple notifications from someone named Molly F., with heart emojis beside the name, something cold and heavy settled in her stomach. 23 years of marriage had given her an intuition she couldn't ignore. The messages were unambiguous. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," wrote Molly. "Last time was amazing." Stephen's responses were equally explicit, detailing what he wanted to do the next time they met. Rachel felt physically ill as she read their plans for a rendezvous during what Stephen had told her would be a business lunch the following day. Rachel, with her auburn hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and reading glasses perched on her nose, sat frozen at the kitchen island. The elegant granite countertop she had been so proud to select when they renovated 5 years ago now felt cold and foreign beneath her fingertips. The home they had built together, filled with 23 years of memories, suddenly seemed like an elaborate stage set. Beautiful, but ultimately fake. "Who even is this woman?" Rachel whispered to the empty kitchen. She clicked on Molly's profile picture and felt another wave of nausea. Molly Freeman was young, probably in her late 20s, with long blonde hair and a carefree smile. According to her profile, she worked at the same car dealership as Stephen, a colleague. How predictable. Rachel heard the sound of Stephen's car pulling into the driveway. She quickly wiped her tears, closed the messages, and placed the phone exactly where he had left it. Her heart hammered in her chest as she tried to decide what to do. Confront him immediately? Pretend she hadn't seen anything? Wait and see if he met with Molly the next day? The front door opened, and Stephen called out cheerfully, "Honey, I'm home. They were out of the spring rolls you like, so I got extra dumplings instead." Rachel took a deep breath and stood up from the kitchen stool. She would confront him now. No games, no waiting. Their marriage deserved at least that much respect. Stephen walked into the kitchen carrying paper bags that smelled of garlic and ginger. At 45, he was still handsome, with salt and pepper hair and the confident posture of a man who sold luxury vehicles for a living. His smile faltered when he saw Rachel's face. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting the bags down. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I saw your messages with Molly," Rachel said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside her. The color drained from Stephen's face. For a moment, he stood completely still, as if hoping this was a nightmare he might wake from. Then, a series of emotions crossed his features. Shock, guilt, and finally, to Rachel's disbelief, what looked almost like relief. "I've been wanting to talk to you about something," he said, pulling out a kitchen chair and sitting down. The casual way he did it made Rachel's blood boil. "Actually, this might be good timing." "Good timing?" Rachel repeated, incredulous. "Finding out my husband is cheating on me is good timing?" Stephen had the audacity to look offended. "I haven't actually cheated yet," he said, as if that made everything better. "We've been talking, yes, planning to meet, but I was going to talk to you first." "About what exactly?" Rachel's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Stephen ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had once found endearing but now seemed calculated. "About opening up our marriage." The kitchen fell silent. Rachel could hear the ticking of the antique wall clock that had been a wedding gift from her grandmother. 23 years of ticking, marking their life together. Tick, tick, tick. "Opening up our marriage," she finally repeated, each word coated in disbelief. "Yes," Stephen said, gaining confidence as he spoke. "I've been doing a lot of reading about it. It's actually quite common nowadays. People our age, married for decades, looking to explore new connections while maintaining their primary relationship. Rachel stared at him, wondering if she'd ever really known this man. "You're serious?" "Completely." He leaned forward, adopting the same persuasive tone he probably used to sell expensive cars. "Rachel, we've been together since college. 23 amazing years. I love you, and that hasn't changed. But sometimes a man needs variety." The word variety hung in the air between them, ugly and insulting. "Variety?" Rachel echoed hollowly. "Yes," Stephen smiled, mistaking her shock for consideration. "It's natural, evolutionary even, and it doesn't have to be one-sided. You could also see other people if you wanted." Rachel felt as if she were watching the scene from somewhere above, a spectator to the collapse of her marriage. The beautiful kitchen with its soft lighting and carefully chosen decor seemed surreal now, like a movie set where actors played out a drama that couldn't possibly be her life. "Let me get this straight," she said slowly. "You've been exchanging explicit messages with a colleague who's young enough to be our daughter, planning to sleep with her behind my back, and now you're suggesting we have an open marriage so you can do it with my blessing?" Stephen winced at her wording, but nodded. "When you put it that way, it sounds bad. But this is actually very modern, Rachel. It's the 21st century. Monogamy is a social construct that many couples are re-examining." Rachel stood up abruptly, needing physical distance from him. "Get out." "What?" "Get out of this kitchen. Get out of my sight. I can't even look at you right now." Stephen's expression hardened. "You're overreacting. I'm trying to be honest with you, to find a solution that works for both of us." "A solution?" Rachel's voice rose. "To what problem exactly? Our marriage? Is that what I am to you now? A problem that needs solving?" "That's not what I meant. Just go, Stephen. I need to think. I need space." He stood up slowly, his salesman's confidence faltering for the first time. "Fine, but this conversation isn't over." As he turned to leave the kitchen, he paused in the doorway. "You know, Rachel," he said softly, "I know you're angry now, but you'll get used to the idea. It's how modern marriages evolve. You'll see." The calm certainty in his voice, the patronizing tone, ignited something in Rachel. A mixture of rage and determination crystallized in her chest as she watched him walk away. If Stephen wanted variety, perhaps it was time to show him exactly what that might look like. The next 5 days passed in a fog of grief and silence. Rachel moved through her daily routine at the nutrition clinic, where she managed the administrative operations, smiling mechanically at clients and staff, while inside she felt hollow. At home, she and Stephen orbited each other like distant planets, exchanging only the most necessary words. She slept in the guest bedroom, unable to bear lying next to him. On the 6th night, as Rachel sat alone in the living room, staring at a book she couldn't focus on, Stephen came home from work and announced it was a stressful day. He paused, looking at her with expectation in his eyes. "Have you thought more about what we discussed?" Rachel looked up at him, a single tear escaping despite her determination to remain composed. Without a word, she set down her book and walked upstairs, leaving him standing in the living room. That night, as she lay awake beside a husband who had become a stranger, a plan began to form in her mind. The following week, on a morning when they were having breakfast before leaving for work, Rachel calmly set down her coffee cup and said, "I've thought about your proposal." Stephen looked up, surprised. "And? I think you're right," she said, maintaining perfect composure. "Maybe our marriage does need to evolve." The smile that spread across Stephen's face made her stomach turn. "I knew you'd understand, honey. This is going to be great for both of us." "Is it?" she asked, taking another sip of coffee. "Absolutely," Stephen said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "This is the natural progression of a mature relationship. I'm so proud of you for being open-minded." Rachel smiled thinly, withdrawing her hand. "I suppose we all need to give it some variety sometimes." Stephen's eyes lit up, Exactly. I knew you'd get it. He glanced at his watch and stood up. I should get going. Big day at the dealership. He bent down to kiss her forehead. We'll talk more tonight. As he headed for the door, Rachel called after him, Yes, we certainly will. When the door closed behind him, Rachel pulled out her phone and made a call. It's time, she said to the person on the other end. Tonight. That evening, Stephen returned home with a spring in his step. He'd been planning to tell Rachel about his idea to introduce her to Molly this weekend. A proper introduction might help ease the transition. He opened the front door, briefcase in hand, and froze. In his living room, sprawled across his sofa watching his television, was a young man Rachel's age. In the kitchen, another man was cooking dinner, the smell of onions and garlic filling the house. What the hell? Stephen dropped his briefcase. The man on the sofa looked up lazily. Oh, hey there. Number 4, right? Number 4? Stephen repeated, bewildered. What is going on? Who are you people? The man in the kitchen called out, Hey, number 4, does our wife like her steak medium or medium rare? Our wife. The words hit Stephen like a physical blow. Where is Rachel? He demanded. The man on the sofa pointed toward the stairs. Number 1 is up there with her, in your bedroom. He winked. Stephen felt his heart stop, then restart at double speed. He bolted for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The journey to the master bedroom had never felt so long. With each step, his mind conjured increasingly horrifying images of what he might find. His wife, his bedroom, a stranger. Number 1. He burst through the bedroom door to find a shirtless man lounging on his bed, hands behind his head, looking completely at home. Hey, number 4, the man said cheerfully. Has our wife gotten home yet? Stephen lunged forward, grabbing the man by the shoulders. Get out of my bed. Get out of my house. The man just laughed. Whoa, easy there. I was here first. Besides, Rachel said tonight was my night. He paused, then added with a smirk, But if you ask nicely, I might let you have a turn. Stephen's vision blurred with rage. Who the hell are you people? Why do you keep calling me number 4? That's what our wife calls you, the man said with a shrug. She assigned the numbers. Before Stephen could respond, he heard the front door open downstairs and Rachel's voice calling out, Honey, I'm home. Stephen released the man and raced back downstairs, nearly falling in his haste. When he reached the bottom, Rachel was standing in the entryway, setting down her purse as casually as if nothing were out of the ordinary. Rachel, he shouted. What the hell is going on? Who are these men? She looked at him with calm eyes. Oh, hello, number 4. Did you hurt yourself? You're limping. Stop calling me that. Answer me. Who are these people? Rachel poured herself a glass of water, taking her time before responding. Don't you remember our conversation this morning about opening up our marriage? She took a sip. I decided to give it a try. Stephen stood speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Is dinner almost ready, Jacob? Rachel called to the man in the kitchen. Almost, sweetheart, came the reply. I'm making your favorite. Wonderful, she said, smiling warmly in his direction before turning back to Stephen. You look upset, dear. I thought this was what you wanted, to modernize our marriage. Not like this, Stephen exploded. This isn't what I meant. No? Rachel tilted her head, her expression innocent. What exactly did you mean then? Stephen struggled to form words, his face contorting with emotions. This isn't. You can't just bring strange men into our home. Why not? Rachel asked. You were planning to bring Molly here this weekend, weren't you? I saw the texts this morning when you were in the shower. The color drained from Stephen's face. That's different, he stammered. How? Rachel's voice took on an edge. Because she's a woman? Because you chose her? Because it serves your desires, but not mine? Before Stephen could answer, the man from upstairs, number 1, appeared at the top of the stairs. Everything okay down there, Rachel? Do you need me to show number 4 out? I'm fine, Chad, Rachel called back. Number 4 was just trying to explain the difference between him bringing his girlfriend here and me bringing my boyfriends. Stephen felt like he was in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. This is insane. I want these men out of my house right now. Rachel's calm demeanor suddenly fell away. Fine, she said coldly. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we'll have to reschedule our evening together. To Stephen's surprise, the men immediately began gathering their things without protest. As they filed toward the door, the one called Chad stopped beside Stephen. She's something special, he said quietly. Too bad you couldn't see that. When the door closed behind them, Stephen turned to Rachel, trembling with anger and confusion. What was that? Some kind of sick joke? No, Stephen, Rachel replied, her voice steady. That was exactly what you asked for, an open marriage. Sometimes a person needs variety. Isn't that what you said? But that's not… Not what? Rachel interrupted. Not fair when it's you watching me with other men instead of me watching you with other women? Not comfortable when you're the one feeling betrayed and humiliated? She stepped closer to him. Not what you had in mind when you threw away 23 years of marriage for a chance to sleep with your young colleague without feeling guilty about it? Stephen collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I can't believe you would do this. Rachel laughed, without humor. I didn't do anything, Stephen. Those men were actors I hired. Stephen's head snapped up. What? Actors, Rachel repeated. I hired them to help you understand exactly how it feels to see someone you love with someone else, to help you experience firsthand the humiliation and betrayal you were asking me to accept. Relief washed over Stephen's face, followed quickly by indignation. So this was all a setup? A trick to manipulate me? No, Stephen. This was a mirror. Rachel sat down across from him. Tell me honestly, how did it feel when you thought I was sleeping with other men? Stephen looked away, unable to meet her eyes. Terrible, he admitted quietly. Like my heart was being ripped out. That's how I felt when I saw your messages with Molly, Rachel said softly. That's how I felt when you suggested our marriage wasn't enough for you anymore. Stephen was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry, he finally said, tears in his eyes. I don't know what I was thinking. I got caught up in the excitement, the attention from someone new. But I don't want to lose you, Rachel. Rachel studied his face, wondering if she could ever trust him again. I don't know if sorry is enough this time. What can I do? He pleaded. I'll do anything. I don't know, Rachel said honestly. Right now I need space to think. You'll be sleeping on the couch tonight. As she walked upstairs alone, Rachel felt a strange mixture of sadness and strength. The marriage she had known was gone, shattered by betrayal and selfishness. Whether something new could be built from the pieces remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. She would never again diminish herself to accommodate someone else's desires. In the quiet of her bedroom, Rachel pulled out her phone and sent a text to the three actors, thanking them for their help. Then she turned off the light and, for the first time in days, fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Morning sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, casting golden patterns across Rachel's face as she slowly opened her eyes. For one blissful moment, she forgot everything that had happened. Then reality crashed back, and the weight of her situation settled onto her chest once more. She lay still, listening to the quiet house and wondering what this new day would bring. Downstairs, she found Stephen already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, still wearing yesterday's rumpled clothes. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, evidence of a sleepless night on the uncomfortable couch. He looked up when she entered, his expression a complex mixture of shame, remorse, and uncertainty. I made coffee, he said, gesturing to the pot. Rachel nodded silently and poured herself a cup, adding a splash of cream. The familiar routine felt strange now, like actors going through motions on a stage where the scenery had suddenly changed. She took a seat across from him, maintaining careful distance. Rachel, Stephen began, his voice rough with emotion. I've been thinking all night. What I did, what I was planning to do. It was unforgivable. She studied his face over the rim of her coffee cup. Why did you do it? Stephen stared down at his hands. I don't have a good answer. I met Molly at work, and she was attentive, flirtatious. It made me feel young again, desired in a way that—" He trailed off, seeming to realize the dangerous territory he was entering. "In a way that I don't make you feel?" Rachel finished for him, her voice remarkably steady, despite the pain his words caused. "That's not what I meant," Stephen backpedaled. "Our relationship is different, deeper. We have history, commitment, but not enough passion to keep you faithful," Rachel observed. "Not enough excitement to prevent you from seeking it elsewhere." Stephen winced. "I got caught up in something that wasn't real. I see that now." Rachel set down her cup with deliberate care. "What exactly do you see, Stephen? Because last night, when you thought I was with other men, you were furious, possessive, hurt, yet you expected me to accept the same situation with a smile." "I know," he whispered. "I know how selfish that was." "Do you?" Rachel stood up, suddenly needing to move. "Because here's what I see. You were willing to throw away 23 years of marriage for variety. You reduced our relationship to something disposable, something that could be opened up without consequences." Stephen looked stricken. "That's not how I saw it. I thought we could have both. The stability of our marriage and the excitement of new experiences." Rachel laughed, a brittle sound without humor. "New experiences. That's a convenient euphemism." She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Tell me something, Stephen. If I had been the one to suggest an open marriage because I'd met some young, attractive man at work, would you have reacted with the same enthusiasm?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "I have to get to work," Rachel said finally, straightening up. "I need some normalcy today." "What happens now?" Stephen asked, his voice small. "With us?" Rachel paused at the doorway. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I need time to think, space to breathe." At the nutrition clinic, Rachel moved through her day in a fog. She greeted clients with her professional smile, scheduled appointments, managed billing issues, and coordinated with the nutritionists, all while feeling disconnected from herself, as if watching someone else perform these familiar tasks. During her lunch break, she locked herself in the small administrative office and finally allowed the tears to come. She cried silently, one hand pressed against her mouth to muffle any sound that might escape. 23 years. A lifetime of memories, dreams, and plans, all called into question by a series of text messages and her husband's casual suggestion that their exclusive commitment was no longer necessary. Her phone buzzed with a text from Stephen. "I'm moving into the guest room until you're ready to talk. I respect your need for space. I love you." Rachel stared at the message, noting how the words, "I love you," once so comforting, now felt hollow, like counterfeit currency. What did love mean to a man who could so easily contemplate sharing himself with someone else? That evening, Rachel came home to find Stephen had indeed moved his essentials to the guest room. The master bedroom was hers alone now, a sanctuary, and a symbol of their separation. She sat on the edge of the bed they had shared for so many years and tried to imagine a future without him. The thought brought both terror and a strange sense of possibility. The days that followed established a new, uncomfortable rhythm. Stephen left for work early and returned late, clearly trying to minimize their interaction. When they did cross paths, their conversations were brief and superficial. Weather, schedules, household logistics. They were like polite strangers sharing a living space, carefully dancing around the elephant in the room. Rachel found herself watching Stephen when he wasn't aware, studying the man she had married as if seeing him for the first time. Had he always had that restless energy? That tendency to check his phone compulsively? That artificial brightness in his voice when talking about work? Or were these new traits born from his secret communications with Molly? 1 week after the confrontation with the actors, Rachel was preparing dinner when she heard Stephen enter the kitchen behind her. She could sense his hesitation, the careful way he was choosing his words before speaking. "Rachel," he finally said, "It's been a week. Can we talk? Really talk?" She turned to face him, wooden spoon still in hand. "About what?" "About us. About what happens next." He gestured to the space between them. "We can't keep living like this." "Like what?" Rachel asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. "Like roommates. Like strangers." Stephen took a step closer. "I miss you. I miss us." Rachel turned back to the stove, stirring the sauce that no longer interested her. "The us you miss doesn't exist anymore, Stephen. You destroyed it." "I made a mistake," he insisted, his voice cracking. "A terrible, stupid mistake that I regret more than anything in my life. But our marriage is worth fighting for. 23 years, Rachel. Doesn't that mean something?" Rachel set down the spoon and faced him again. "It meant everything to me," she said quietly. "That's why your betrayal hurt so deeply." "I know," Stephen whispered, "and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." "How?" Rachel asked. "How do you make up for breaking someone's trust, for making them question everything they believed about their marriage?" "I don't know," Stephen admitted, "but I want to try. Please, Rachel, give me a chance to show you that I can be the husband you deserve." Rachel studied his face, the sincere regret in his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the new lines that seemed to have appeared in just the past week. A part of her wanted to believe him, to accept his apology, and try to rebuild. Another part whispered that some betrayals cut too deep for healing. "I need more time," she finally said. "This isn't something I can decide overnight." Stephen nodded, disappointment clear in his slumped shoulders. "I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes." As he turned to leave the kitchen, Rachel called after him. "Stephen?" He paused, hope flickering across his face. "Are you still in contact with her? With Molly?" "No," he said firmly. "I ended it completely. I asked for a transfer to a different department so we wouldn't have to work together. My regional manager approved it yesterday." Rachel nodded, absorbing this information. It was a positive step, but was it enough? That night, as she lay alone in their bed, Rachel's phone lit up with a text from Lori, their daughter. "Hey Mom, just checking in. Haven't heard from you guys in a while. Everything okay?" Rachel stared at the message, her throat tightening. They hadn't told Lori anything about what was happening. How could they? Their bright, perceptive daughter, who was focused on her studies in another city, building her own life. The last thing Rachel wanted was to burden her with their problems. "Everything's fine, sweetie," Rachel typed back. "Just busy with work. How are your classes?" The lie tasted bitter, but she wasn't ready to share the truth. Not yet. The following Saturday morning, Rachel woke to the smell of coffee and something baking. She followed the aroma downstairs to find Stephen in the kitchen, flour dusting his shirt as he removed a tray of cinnamon rolls from the oven. "Morning," he said, looking up with a hesitant smile. "I thought I'd make your favorite breakfast." Rachel leaned against the doorframe, unsure how to respond to this gesture. Part of her appreciated the effort. Another part felt it was too small a step to address the chasm between them. "Thank you," she said simply, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. They ate in companionable silence, the fresh pastries a sweet reminder of weekend mornings from their past. Lazy days when they would linger over breakfast, reading sections of the newspaper to each other, planning outings or projects for the house. "I was thinking," Stephen said cautiously, breaking the silence, "maybe we could see someone. A marriage counselor." Rachel looked up, surprised by the suggestion. Stephen had always been resistant to therapy, viewing it as unnecessary or even slightly embarrassing. "You do that?" she asked. "I'd do anything," he replied, his eyes meeting hers steadily. "This marriage is worth fighting for, Rachel. We've built a life together, and I don't want to lose it because of my stupidity." She considered his words, turning the idea over in her mind. Professional help might provide a structured way to address what had happened, to understand why Stephen had been vulnerable to temptation, and whether their relationship could be salvaged. "I'll think about it," she promised. Later that day, while Stephen was in the garage organizing tools, a task he tackled when anxious, Rachel sat in the garden, phone in hand. She had been contemplating a call she knew she needed to make but had been avoiding. Taking a deep breath, she dialed. "Mom?" Lori's surprised voice answered. "I was just about to call you. What's up?" "Hi, sweetheart," Rachel said, her voice already threatening to break. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" There was a pause. "Mom, what's wrong? You sound upset." "I need to tell you something about your father and me," Rachel began, tears welling up despite her determination to remain composed. "We're going through a difficult time right now." "What happened?" The concern in Lori's voice was palpable. Rachel closed her eyes, searching for the right words. "Your father, he betrayed my trust in a significant way." She couldn't bring herself to be more specific. Not yet. "Did he cheat on you?" Lori asked directly, her tone hardening. Rachel hesitated. "He was planning to. I caught him exchanging inappropriate messages with a woman from work. He wanted to open our marriage." "He what?" Lori's outrage burst through the phone. "Are you kidding me? After 23 years? Who does he think he is?" "Lori, please," Rachel soothed, though her daughter's indignation was secretly validating. "It's complicated." "No, Mom, it's not complicated. It's wrong." Lori's voice shook with emotion. "What are you going to do? Are you leaving him?" "I don't know yet," Rachel admitted. "We're talking about counseling. Do you want to come stay with me for a while? Get some distance?" The offer touched Rachel deeply. "Thank you, sweetheart, but I need to face this here. Running away won't solve anything." "I'm coming home next weekend," Lori declared, her tone brooking no argument. "I want to see you, and maybe have a word with Dad." "Lori, don't worry. I won't make things worse. I need to see for myself that you're okay." After they hung up, Rachel remained in the garden, watching bees move between the lavender blooms she had planted years ago. The conversation with Lori had been both difficult and cathartic. Sharing her pain had made it more real somehow, but also more manageable. She was not alone in this. That night, Stephen knocked gently on the master bedroom door. When Rachel opened it, he stood in the hallway, not attempting to enter her space. "I heard you on the phone with Lori earlier," he said, his expression grim. "Did you tell her?" Rachel nodded. "She deserved to know that things aren't okay between us." Stephen's shoulders slumped. "How did she take it?" "How do you think?" Rachel asked. "She's angry? Confused? Disappointed? Is she coming home?" "Next weekend," Rachel confirmed. "She wants to see us." Stephen ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture that once endeared him to her. "I'll have to face her eventually. Face what I've done to our family." The word family hung in the air between them, a reminder of what was at stake, of the connections that extended beyond just the two of them. "Stephen," Rachel said slowly, having reached a decision during her hours in the garden, "I'll go to counseling with you. Not because I'm ready to forgive, but because I need to understand. I need to know if there's anything left to save." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "That's all I'm asking for, a chance." As he turned to go back to the guest room, Rachel added, "But I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we try to rebuild, it has to be with complete honesty. No more secrets, no more private messages, no more Mollies. I promise," Stephen said solemnly. "Complete transparency from now on." Rachel nodded, not yet ready to voice the question that had been haunting her since that first devastating discovery. Even with counseling, even with promises and good intentions, could a heart once broken ever truly trust again? The waiting room of Dr. Eleanor Wright's office felt simultaneously sterile and intimate. Neutral-toned walls displayed framed certificates and abstract watercolors meant to evoke calm. Rachel sat at one end of a small sofa, Stephen at the other, the cushion between them a physical manifestation of their emotional distance. A coffee table scattered with magazines about wellness and relationships completed the scene, a stage set for the drama of marriages in crisis. Rachel studied her hands, noticing how tightly she was clasping them in her lap. 3 days had passed since she'd agreed to counseling, and in that time, The reality of their situation had settled over her like a heavy fog. They were here, about to expose their most private pain to a stranger. The thought made her stomach clench. Stephen cleared his throat, clearly as uncomfortable as she was. The reviews for Dr. Wright were excellent, he offered, attempting conversation. She specializes in couples dealing with infidelity. Considering infidelity, Rachel corrected quietly. You didn't actually sleep with her. Stephen winced. That doesn't make it better. No, Rachel agreed. It doesn't. The inner office door opened, and a woman in her 50s emerged. Her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had kind eyes behind stylish glasses and a warm, professional smile. Mr. and Mrs. Howell, I'm Dr. Wright. Please come in. The therapy session that followed was both more and less difficult than Rachel had anticipated. Dr. Wright established ground rules first. No interrupting, no name-calling, an emphasis on I statements rather than accusations. Then came the questions, gentle but probing, about their history together, their communication patterns, and finally, the events that had brought them to her office. So, Stephen, Dr. Wright said, her tone neutral, you were exchanging messages with a colleague that crossed boundaries, and when Rachel discovered them, you suggested an open marriage. Can you help me understand what was happening for you at that time? Stephen shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. I was flattered by Molly's attention. She's younger, and she made me feel... He glanced at Rachel, then back at the therapist. Valued. Important. The dealership has been struggling with sales, and I've been feeling, I don't know, like I'm not succeeding the way I should be. So this relationship provided validation that you weren't getting elsewhere? Dr. Wright asked. I guess so, Stephen admitted. And then it became exciting. Forbidden. I started looking forward to her messages, planning responses that would impress her. He looked down at his hands. I know how pathetic that sounds. Human behavior isn't pathetic, Dr. Wright corrected gently. It's complicated. Rachel, how did you feel when you discovered these messages? Rachel took a deep breath, devastated, humiliated, like the ground had disappeared from under me. She turned slightly toward Stephen. We've been together since we were 21. I thought I knew you completely. Then suddenly, you were this stranger planning to betray everything we'd built. I wasn't thinking of it as betrayal, Stephen interjected, then quickly apologized for interrupting. In my mind, I'd convinced myself that if I got your permission first, it wouldn't be cheating, that somehow an open marriage would let me explore these feelings without losing you. But you were already emotionally involved with Molly before suggesting this arrangement, Dr. Wright observed. The betrayal had already begun. Stephen nodded slowly, the realization visibly settling on him. Yes, he admitted, it had. As the session continued, Rachel found herself articulating feelings she hadn't fully acknowledged even to herself. Not just anger and hurt, but fear. Fear that she wasn't enough. Fear that 23 years of marriage could be so easily devalued. Fear of starting over at 44 if this couldn't be repaired. Rachel, Dr. Wright said toward the end of their session, you mentioned using actors to create a scenario where Stephen would experience what an open marriage might actually feel like from your perspective. That's an unusual approach. Can you tell me more about that decision? Rachel glanced at Stephen before answering. I needed him to feel what I was feeling. Words weren't enough. He seemed to have this fantasy about open marriage that completely ignored the emotional reality, the jealousy, the humiliation, the sense of being replaced. And did it achieve what you hoped? Yes, Rachel said simply. It did. Dr. Wright nodded. Stephen, would you agree? Absolutely, he said firmly. It was excruciating. The thought of Rachel with someone else, in our home, in our bed. He shuddered visibly. It made me realize instantly how selfish and hypocritical my suggestion had been. As they were leaving, Dr. Wright gave them each a journal with instructions to write about their feelings between sessions, focusing on specific prompts she provided. Communication is key, she told them, but sometimes writing allows us to access emotions we struggle to express verbally. The drive home was quiet, both of them processing the rawness of the session. Rachel stared out the passenger window, watching autumn leaves swirl across lawns and sidewalks. The landscape seemed appropriate, a world in transition, neither summer nor winter, caught in between. "Are you okay?" Stephen asked as they pulled into their driveway. Rachel considered the question. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Today was intense. I thought it was helpful." Stephen ventured cautiously. "Maybe," Rachel conceded. "It's just the beginning, though." That night, Rachel sat cross-legged on their bed, her bed now, with the journal open before her. The first prompt was deceptively simple. "What do you want from your marriage?" She tapped her pen against the blank page, considering. "Security," she wrote finally. "Honesty, partnership, to be valued not just for what I provide, but for who I am." She paused, then added, "To not have to wonder if I'm enough." In the guest room, Stephen was likely writing in his own journal. Rachel wondered what his words might reveal. Was he still secretly longing for Molly's attention? Was his remorse genuine or simply a response to being caught? And even if he was truly sorry, was that enough to rebuild what had been broken? The weekend arrived with a nervous energy permeating the house. Lori was coming home, their first time seeing her since the revelation. Rachel spent Saturday morning cleaning, though the house was already spotless, a task to occupy her hands while her mind raced. "What time does her train get in?" Stephen asked, hovering in the doorway of the kitchen where Rachel was arranging fresh flowers. Another unnecessary task. 2:15, Rachel replied without looking up. "I'm picking her up." "Alone?" Stephen's voice held a note of apprehension. Rachel finally met his eyes. "Yes, Stephen. Alone. She asked specifically to see me first." He nodded, accepting this small rejection as part of his penance. "I'll make her favorite lasagna for dinner." The train station was crowded with weekend travelers, but Rachel spotted Lori immediately, her tall, slender figure moving purposefully through the crowd. Long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail that swung with each step. She looked so grown up, so self-assured. Rachel's heart swelled with pride, even as it ached with the knowledge of the conversation to come. "Mom!" Lori called, breaking into a run when she saw Rachel. They embraced tightly, and Rachel felt tears threatening. She hadn't realized how much she needed this, the simple comfort of holding her child. "Let me look at you," Rachel said, stepping back with her hands still on Lori's shoulders. "You look wonderful, sweetheart." "I look like I've been living on coffee and ramen," Lori corrected with a laugh. Graduate school isn't exactly conducive to self-care. In the car, Lori's light mood shifted. "So," she said, her voice turning serious, "tell me everything, and don't sugarcoat it." Rachel took a deep breath and began from the beginning, finding the messages, Stephen's suggestion, the actor's scheme, the counseling. She kept her tone as neutral as possible, determined not to influence Lori's perspective more than the facts themselves would. "I can't believe Dad would do something so cliché," Lori said when Rachel finished. "The middle-aged man having a crisis, chasing a younger woman. It's like he's following some pathetic script. It's more complicated than that," Rachel found herself saying, surprised by her own impulse to defend Stephen. "We're trying to understand why it happened." Lori shot her a skeptical look. "Are you actually considering forgiving him?" "I don't know," Rachel admitted, hands tightening on the steering wheel. 23 years is a lot to walk away from without at least trying to fix it. It's also a lot to throw away on some midlife fantasy, Lori countered. "You deserve better, Mom." The words touched Rachel deeply. "Thank you, sweetheart. But this is something your father and I need to work through together. Whatever happens, I don't want you to feel caught in the middle." Lori scoffed, a bit late for that. At home, the reunion between Lori and Stephen was tense, but civil. Lori allowed her father to hug her, though she remained stiff in his embrace. Throughout dinner, she was polite but distant, addressing most of her conversation to Rachel. Stephen bore this treatment with quiet resignation. The lasagna turned out well, he offered during an awkward silence. "It's good, Dad," Lori acknowledged, her tone softening slightly. "Thanks for making it." That night, after Lori had gone to bed in her old room, Rachel found Stephen sitting alone on the back patio, staring into the darkness of their yard. "She hates me," he said without looking up as Rachel took the seat beside him. "She doesn't hate you," Rachel corrected. "She's disappointed and angry. Give her time." Stephen nodded, his profile illuminated by the soft patio lights. "I deserve it," he said. "I just never considered how my actions would affect Lori. I was so focused on my own feelings, my own desires." "That's been the problem all along, hasn't it?" Rachel observed, not unkindly. "You weren't thinking about anyone but yourself." "I know," Stephen admitted. "Dr. Wright said something today that really hit me. She asked if I'd considered what I was risking before I started messaging Molly. And the truth is, I didn't. I didn't think I'd get caught, and I didn't think about what I'd lose if I did." Rachel was silent for a long moment. "What would you have done?" she finally asked. "If I had agreed to the open marriage, would you have gone through with it?" Stephen turned to face her fully. "I honestly don't know," he said. "I think I was caught up in a fantasy that had very little to do with reality. The idea of being with Molly was exciting, but the actual mechanics of an open marriage, the jealousy, the scheduling, the inevitable complications, I hadn't thought any of that through." His honesty was both refreshing and painful. Rachel stood up, suddenly tired. "It's late. We should get some sleep." The next morning, Rachel came downstairs to find Lori and Stephen deep in conversation at the kitchen table. They fell silent when she entered, both looking up with expressions that suggested she'd interrupted something significant. "Don't stop on my account," Rachel said, moving to pour herself coffee. "Dad was just explaining to me what's been happening with him," Lori said, her tone measured, "about his work stress and his feelings of inadequacy." Rachel raised an eyebrow at Stephen, surprised he'd been so forthcoming with their daughter. "I thought she deserved to understand," Stephen explained. "Not as an excuse, but as context." Lori stood up, wrapping her robe more tightly around herself. "I still think what you did was incredibly selfish, Dad. But," she glanced at Rachel, "I appreciate you being honest with me now." The remainder of Lori's visit passed more comfortably. By Sunday afternoon, when Rachel drove her back to the train station, some of the initial tension had dissipated. "Are you sure you're going to be okay?" Lori asked as they waited on the platform. "You can always come stay with me if you need a break." Rachel smiled, touched by her daughter's concern. "I'm okay, sweetheart. One day at a time, right?" Lori hugged her tightly. "For what it's worth," she whispered, "I think Dad is genuinely sorry. But that doesn't mean you have to forgive him." "I know," Rachel whispered back. As she watched the train pull away, Rachel felt a curious lightness. Lori's visit had been a reminder of what she and Stephen had created together. Not just a marriage, but a family. Their daughter, now a remarkable young woman, was a living testament to the good that had existed between them. Was that enough reason to try to salvage what remained? The second therapy session with Dr. Wright was more focused than the first. They discussed specific patterns in their relationship. Stephen's tendency to withdraw when stressed. Rachel's habit of anticipating others' needs while neglecting to express her own. Their mutual avoidance of conflict. "I'd like to talk about intimacy," Dr. Wright said toward the end of the session. "Not just physical intimacy, but emotional connection. When did you last feel truly close to each other?" Rachel and Stephen exchanged uncomfortable glances. "It's been a while," Stephen admitted. "Even before everything happened." "We got busy," Rachel added. "Work, house projects, routine. We stopped making time for just us." Dr. Wright nodded. "That's very common. Relationships need nurturing to thrive. They don't run on autopilot." She looked at her notes. "For next week, I'd like you to plan an evening together. Not necessarily romantic, but intentional. A shared experience with no distractions, no phones, no television, no talk about work or household matters." "Like a date?" Stephen asked, looking both hopeful and uncertain. Think of it as an opportunity to reconnect as people, not just as spouses with roles and responsibilities, Dr. Wright suggested. Sometimes we need to see each other with fresh eyes. As they left the office, Rachel felt a mixture of anxiety and curiosity about the assignment. Could they really set aside the hurt and tension long enough to connect? And if they did, what would they find? The comfortable familiarity of old friends, or two strangers who had grown irreparably apart? Planning what Dr. Wright had euphemistically called their shared experience proved more challenging than Rachel had anticipated. Every suggestion seemed either too casual or too intimate, too public or too private. After several days of indecision, Stephen finally proposed a compromise. "What about the botanical gardens?" he suggested over breakfast on Thursday morning. "They're doing that nighttime exhibition with the light installations. It's public enough that we won't feel pressured, but quiet enough that we can actually talk." Rachel considered the idea. The botanical gardens had been a favorite spot early in their relationship. They'd even had their engagement photos taken there 24 years ago. "That could work," she agreed cautiously. "Saturday evening?" Stephen nodded, a tentative smile crossing his face. "I'll get tickets." The days leading up to Saturday carried a strange tension, reminiscent of the nervous anticipation before their first dates decades ago. Rachel found herself wondering what to wear, then feeling foolish for caring. This wasn't a romantic outing, it was a therapy assignment. Still, when Saturday evening arrived, she found herself taking extra care with her appearance, applying subtle makeup, styling her auburn hair in loose waves, and choosing a forest green dress that she knew complemented her eyes. When she came downstairs, Stephen was waiting in the living room. He'd clearly made an effort, too, wearing a blue button-down shirt she'd always liked and the charcoal slacks she'd given him for his birthday last year. He'd even trimmed his beard, something he'd been neglecting in recent weeks. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice sincere but hesitant, as if unsure whether such compliments were still allowed between them. "Thank you," Rachel replied simply. "You look nice, too." The drive to the botanical gardens was filled with cautious small talk, comments about the weather, a new restaurant that had opened downtown, an article Stephen had read about sustainable gardening. It was the kind of conversation they might have had with casual acquaintances, carefully avoiding anything too personal or potentially contentious. The gardens themselves were transformed. Pathways lined with luminarias led visitors through elaborate light installations that turned familiar landscapes into magical realms. Trees wrapped in twinkling lights reached toward the night sky, and colorful projections danced across the surfaces of the conservatory buildings. "This is amazing," Rachel murmured as they entered. Despite her determination to maintain emotional distance, she found herself genuinely enchanted by the display. "I knew you'd like it," Stephen said, the pleasure evident in his voice. "Remember when we came here for the butterfly exhibition? Right after we got engaged?" Rachel nodded, the memory washing over her. "You were terrified that butterfly that landed on your nose was going to bite you." "I was not terrified," Stephen protested, but he was laughing. Cautious, maybe. "You squealed, Stephen. Actually squealed." Their shared laughter felt both familiar and new, a forgotten language they were suddenly remembering how to speak. They continued through the exhibition, pointing out particularly beautiful displays to each other, gradually relaxing into a comfortable rhythm. Near the Japanese garden, they found a secluded bench overlooking a small pond, where floating lanterns cast golden reflections on the water. By unspoken agreement, they sat down, taking a moment to absorb the peaceful scene. "This was a good idea," Rachel admitted. "Thank you for suggesting it." Stephen turned slightly toward her on the bench. "Rachel, can I ask you something? Something that's been on my mind since our last session with Dr. Wright?" She tensed slightly, but nodded. "Go ahead. Are you happy? I mean, were you happy before everything happened, with our life together?" The question caught her off guard. She looked out at the lanterns floating on the dark water, considering her answer carefully. "I was content," she said finally. "Comfortable, but happy?" She paused. "I'm not sure I've thought about that in a long time." I've been focused on doing, managing the clinic, keeping our home running, staying in touch with Lori. I haven't spent much time thinking about being. I think that's part of what went wrong, Stephen said quietly. For both of us, we got so caught up in our routines, our responsibilities, that we stopped asking if we were fulfilled, if we were still growing, both individually and together. Rachel looked at him with surprise. That's insightful. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he admitted, and a lot of reading. Dr. Wright recommended some books about marriage and midlife transitions. And what have you learned? Rachel asked, genuinely curious. Stephen was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. That what I did, the messages with Molly, the suggestion of an open marriage, it wasn't really about Molly at all. It wasn't even about sex or attraction, not fundamentally. He looked directly at Rachel. It was about feeling stuck, about hitting 45 and wondering if this was all there was going to be, if I'd somehow missed something essential along the way. Rachel felt a surprising resonance with his words. I understand that feeling, she admitted. Not the part about seeking attention from someone else, but the questioning, the wondering if there should be more to life than just continuing. They sat in thoughtful silence, the colored lights playing across their faces. Around them, other visitors moved through the gardens, their voices a gentle murmur in the background. The thing is, Rachel continued after a while, even if I understand the feeling, I don't understand the choice you made. If you were questioning your life, why not talk to me about it? Why look outside our marriage? Stephen sighed heavily. Because I was ashamed. Because saying, I'm unhappy, or I'm unfulfilled, felt like an accusation against you, against our life together. And because, he hesitated, because I was afraid you might be feeling the same way, that if we both acknowledged the emptiness, the whole thing might collapse. His honesty was disarming. Rachel found herself wondering if she would have been receptive to such a conversation had he initiated it. Would she have been defensive, hurt, or would she have recognized her own unacknowledged restlessness in his words? We should have been able to talk about these things, she said finally. After 23 years, we should have been able to be honest with each other. We still can, Stephen suggested, a cautious hope in his voice. Maybe that's what this is, a painful but necessary wake-up call, a chance to rebuild something more authentic. Rachel wasn't ready to embrace such optimism, but she didn't reject it either. Maybe, she conceded. But trust isn't rebuilt overnight, Stephen, and I'm not sure I know how to trust you again. I know, he said solemnly. I know I have to earn that back. I just hope you'll give me the chance to try. They completed their tour of the gardens in contemplative silence, each processing the conversation. As they walked back to the car, Stephen hesitantly offered his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Rachel took it. Not quite an act of forgiveness, but perhaps a small step toward possibility. The following Tuesday brought their third session with Dr. Wright. They recounted their evening at the Botanical Gardens, including the conversation about fulfillment and life transitions. That's significant progress, Dr. Wright noted. You're beginning to identify the underlying issues rather than just focusing on the precipitating incident. She looked at Rachel. How did it feel to hear Stephen articulate those feelings of restlessness? Surprisingly validating, Rachel admitted. Not his actions, but the feelings themselves. I think I've been experiencing something similar without having words for it. Dr. Wright nodded. Midlife often brings a reevaluation of priorities and choices. It's normal and even healthy to question whether your life reflects your authentic self. He turned to Stephen. The problem wasn't in having those feelings, but in how you chose to address them. I know, Stephen acknowledged. I took the coward's way out. I wouldn't frame it as cowardice, Dr. Wright corrected. It was avoidance, a maladaptive coping mechanism. But recognizing that is the first step toward developing healthier patterns. As the session continued, they discussed new communication strategies, ways to express difficult emotions without blame, techniques for active listening, methods for checking in with each other regularly about deeper needs and feelings. "I'd like to try something before we end today," Dr. Wright said, looking between them. "Rachel, I'd like you to tell Stephen, in simple terms, what you need from him right now to continue this healing process. And Stephen, I want you to do the same." Rachel took a deep breath. "I need honesty," she said, looking directly at Stephen. "Complete transparency. I need to know that there are no more secrets between us." Stephen nodded. "I need patience," he said softly, "and the space to show you through actions, not just words, that I'm committed to rebuilding what I damaged." Dr. Wright smiled approvingly. "Excellent. Remember those needs as you continue to work through this process. They're your guideposts." That evening, as Rachel prepared for bed, her phone chimed with a text from Stephen. "Thank you for today. I meant what I said about transparency. I've deleted all social media apps from my phone and changed my email password to one you know. It's a small step, but I want you to never have reason to doubt me again." Rachel stared at the message, a complex mixture of emotions washing over her. His gesture was both reassuring and slightly sad. Trust that had to be enforced through such measures was a pale shadow of the implicit faith they'd once had in each other. Still, it was a concrete action, a tangible demonstration of his commitment to change. "I appreciate that," she texted back after a long pause. "Good night, Stephen." As October gave way to November, a new routine established itself. They continued their weekly sessions with Dr. Wright. Stephen remained in the guest room, but the invisible wall between them gradually became more permeable. They began sharing meals again, watching occasional movies together in the living room, and even undertaking a long-postponed project to reorganize the garage, a task that required cooperation and communication. There were still difficult moments. Rachel would sometimes catch herself watching Stephen when he was on his phone, an instinctive suspicion she hated but couldn't fully suppress. Stephen would occasionally grow quiet and withdrawn, particularly after long days at work, triggering Rachel's fears that he was hiding something. But they were learning to address these moments directly, rather than allowing them to fester. "I notice you've been checking your phone a lot tonight," Rachel said one evening as they finished dinner. "Is everything okay?" In the past, such a question might have carried an accusatory edge, and Stephen might have responded defensively. Now, he simply showed her the screen. "The regional sales reports are coming in. We're having a rough quarter, and I'm worried about my team meeting their targets. Is that something I can help you talk through?" Rachel offered, surprising herself with the genuine desire to support him. Stephen looked up, clearly touched by the gesture. "Actually, yes. You've always been good at seeing the bigger picture when I get caught in the details." They spent the next hour at the kitchen table, Stephen explaining the challenges his dealership was facing in an increasingly digital marketplace. Rachel offering insights from her experience managing the nutrition clinic. It was the most natural they'd felt together in months, focused on a shared problem, leveraging each other's strengths, finding solutions together. That night, as Rachel was about to turn off her bedside lamp, a soft knock came at her bedroom door. "Rachel?" Stephen's voice was hesitant. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" She sat up, pulling the covers around her. "Come in." He opened the door but remained in the doorway, respecting the boundary of her personal space. "I just wanted to say thank you for earlier, for helping me with the work stuff. It reminded me of—" He paused. "It reminded me of us. How good we are together when we're really connecting." Rachel nodded. "I felt that too." Stephen shifted his weight, clearly wanting to say more but uncertain if he should. "Dr. Wright asked me in my individual session what I miss most about how things were before. Do you want to know what I told her?" Rachel hesitated, then nodded again. "I told her I miss being your partner," he said simply. "Not just your husband, but your teammate, the person you share problems with, celebrate victories with, face challenges with. I miss being the one you turn to first when something happens, good or bad." The words resonated painfully in Rachel's chest. She missed that too, the automatic sharing of life's moments, The knowledge that whatever happened, they would process it together. I'm trying to find my way back to being that person, Stephen continued, the person worthy of being your partner. I know it takes time, and I'm not asking you to rush or force anything. I just wanted you to know that's what I'm working toward. Rachel felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Thank you for telling me, she said quietly. After Stephen returned to the guest room, Rachel lay awake for a long time, examining her feelings. There was still hurt there, still anger at moments, but there was also a tentative hope beginning to take root. Not a naive hope that everything would magically return to how it had been, but a more mature expectation that perhaps something new and stronger might eventually grow from the painful breaking open of their complacency. The question was whether that fragile new growth would be sturdy enough to withstand the inevitable storms to come. Only time would tell. The December morning dawned cold and clear, sunlight streaming through frosted windows and casting prismatic patterns across the bedroom floor. Rachel stood at the window, coffee mug warming her hands, watching as the neighborhood slowly came to life. 3 months had passed since that devastating discovery on Stephen's phone. 3 months of therapy, uncomfortable conversations, small steps forward, and occasional steps back. Today marked an important milestone, their final scheduled session with Dr. Wright. Not an end to therapy altogether, but a transition from weekly intensive sessions to monthly check-ins. Dr. Wright felt they had established enough healthy communication patterns to continue the work more independently. Rachel wasn't sure if she felt relieved or apprehensive about this vote of confidence. "Morning!" Stephen's voice came from the doorway of the master bedroom. Her bedroom still, though the boundaries had softened somewhat in recent weeks. He leaned against the frame, already dressed for work, but not yet wearing his tie. "Sleep okay?" "Not bad," Rachel replied, turning from the window. "You?" "Better than I have in a while, actually." He hesitated, then added, "Big day today." Rachel nodded. "Last regular session. Are you ready for that?" The question carried layers of meaning beyond the therapy appointment. Was she ready to continue this journey with less professional guidance? Was she ready to decide what their future would look like? "I think so," she said cautiously. "One way or another, we need to move forward." Stephen nodded, understanding the implication. "I made breakfast if you're hungry. Nothing fancy, just some oatmeal and fruit. Thank you. I'll be down in a minute." As Stephen headed downstairs, Rachel turned back to the window. The sun had fully risen now, illuminating the neighbor's yard where an elderly couple was carefully hanging Christmas lights along their porch railing. The woman held the strand while the man secured it with clips, their movements revealing the choreographed understanding of decades together. Rachel wondered what storms they had weathered in their long marriage, what betrayals or disappointments they had overcome to reach that comfortable synchronicity. At the clinic that morning, Rachel found herself unusually distracted. She misplaced files, scheduled a patient for the wrong day, and had to ask the head nutritionist to repeat a question twice before she understood it. "Everything okay, Rachel?" Dr. Melissa Chang asked during their lunch break. Melissa was not just the clinic's founder, but had become a friend over the years Rachel had worked there. "Just a lot on my mind," Rachel replied, picking at her salad without much interest. Melissa studied her with knowing eyes. "How are things with Stephen? Still doing the counseling?" Rachel had shared the basics of her marital situation with Melissa early on, needing someone outside the home to confide in. "Today's our last weekly session," she explained. "After this, we're supposed to take the training wheels off, as Dr. Wright puts it." "And how do you feel about that?" Rachel considered the question. "Uncertain," she admitted. "We've made progress, but I still don't know if it's enough, if we can really rebuild after what happened." Melissa nodded thoughtfully. "My grandmother used to say that a broken bone, when healed properly, is often stronger at the mended place than it was before. But the key is healed properly, with the right support, the right alignment, and enough time. And if it doesn't heal properly, then it causes pain with every step," Melissa said simply. "And eventually, You have to decide if that pain is something you can live with. The conversation stayed with Rachel throughout the afternoon, resonating with her own internal debates. She and Stephen had undoubtedly done the work of proper healing, seeking professional help, maintaining open communication, addressing underlying issues rather than just the surface betrayal. But had it been enough? Had enough time passed? And most importantly, would the mended place truly be stronger? Or would it remain forever vulnerable to fracture? When they arrived at Dr. Wright's office that evening, Rachel's thoughts were still churning. The therapist greeted them warmly, noting that this session would focus on consolidating their progress and planning for the future. Before we begin, Dr. Wright said, I'd like each of you to reflect on where you were when we started versus where you are now. What's the most significant change you've noticed, either in yourself or in your relationship? Stephen went first. I think the biggest change for me has been learning to be honest about my feelings before they become problematic. I used to think certain thoughts or emotions were too uncomfortable to share, so I'd keep them bottled up until they found unhealthy outlets. He glanced at Rachel. Now, I understand that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's actually essential for real connection. Dr. Wright nodded approvingly. That's excellent insight, Stephen. Rachel, what about you? Rachel took a deep breath. I've realized that I had been accepting good enough instead of asking for what I really needed. I was so focused on maintaining harmony, on being the perfect wife and mother, that I lost sight of my own fulfillment. She looked directly at Stephen. I was complicit in the distance that grew between us, even if I wasn't complicit in your response to it. That's a powerful acknowledgement, Dr. Wright observed. Both of you have shown remarkable growth in self-awareness. Now, looking ahead, what are your intentions for your relationship moving forward? The question hung in the air between them. This was it, the moment to articulate what came next. Would they commit to continuing the rebuilding process? Or would they acknowledge that too much damage had been done? Stephen spoke first, his voice steady but vulnerable. I want to earn back my place as Rachel's partner, he said. Not just legally or logistically, but emotionally. I want to rebuild our marriage on a foundation of complete honesty and mutual support. He turned to face Rachel fully. But only if that's what you want to. I understand if the trust is too broken to repair, and I'll respect whatever decision you make. Dr. Wright turned to Rachel. And you, Rachel? What are your intentions? Rachel felt the weight of the moment, the culmination of months of painful growth and careful consideration. What did she truly want? I want, she began, then paused to gather her thoughts. I want to move forward without fear. I don't want to be looking over my shoulder or checking his phone or wondering if history will repeat itself. She met Stephen's gaze. I want to believe in us again, but I'm still not entirely sure if I can. That's a very honest response, Dr. Wright affirmed. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, and it's okay to acknowledge that you're still in process. She looked between them. Which brings me to an important question. Living arrangements. Stephen, you've been in the guest room for these past months. Have you discussed when or if that might change? They exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed it explicitly, though the question had hovered unspoken between them. I think that's something we should decide tonight, Rachel said quietly. After this session, Dr. Wright nodded. That seems appropriate. As we transition to monthly sessions, I encourage you both to continue the practices we've established. Regular check-ins with each other, journaling when emotions become complex, and using the communication techniques we've practiced. She smiled encouragingly. You've done the hardest part already, facing the fracture honestly and committing to the healing process. Now it's about patience and consistent effort. As the session concluded, Dr. Wright handed them each a sealed envelope. A little homework for after our session. Don't open these until you're home and have some quiet time to reflect. The drive home was quiet, both of them processing the session and anticipating the conversation to come. When they arrived, Stephen hesitated in the entryway. Would you like some tea? He offered. Before we talk? Rachel nodded, grateful for the small ritual that would give them both a moment to collect their thoughts. They moved to the kitchen, Stephen filling the kettle while Rachel retrieved mugs and the tin of herbal tea they both preferred in the evening. There was comfort in the familiarity of these movements, this choreography they had perfected over decades together. Rachel found herself watching Stephen's hands as he measured loose tea into the infuser. Strong, capable hands that had held hers through joy and grief, that had cradled their newborn daughter, that had built bookshelves and fixed leaky faucets, and wrapped Christmas presents with endearing clumsiness. They carried their steaming mugs to the living room, sitting at opposite ends of the sofa, close enough for serious conversation, but with space between them that acknowledged the still healing nature of their relationship. "So," Stephen said, after they had each taken a sip, "the guest room." "Yes," Rachel agreed. "The guest room." A silence stretched between them, neither quite sure how to proceed. "I think," Rachel finally said, "that I need to be completely honest about where I am." Stephen nodded, his expression serious. "That's all I ask. These past few months have been clarifying. The therapy, the conversations, the time apart while still living under the same roof. It's given me perspective I didn't have before." She set her mug down on the coffee table. "I've realized that what hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal itself, but what it revealed about how far apart we'd drifted, without even noticing, how we'd stopped truly seeing each other." "I feel the same way," Stephen admitted. "It's like we were on autopilot for years." Rachel nodded. "Exactly. And in some strange way, as painful as this has been, it forced us to wake up, to really look at our marriage, at ourselves, at what we want for the future." She took a deep breath. "And what I want, I've realized, is not to go back to how things were before." Stephen's face fell slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I understand." "No," Rachel corrected gently. "I don't think you do. I don't want to go back because I don't want that sleepwalking marriage anymore. If we move forward together, I want something new, something more authentic, more conscious, more alive." Hope flickered in Stephen's eyes. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I'm ready to try," Rachel clarified. "Not to forget or to pretend it never happened, but to build something different on the foundation we've established these past months. Something stronger." The tension visibly left Stephen's body, his shoulders relaxing as he exhaled. "Rachel, that's more than I dared hope for." "It doesn't mean everything is fixed," she cautioned. "I still have moments of doubt, moments when the hurt feels fresh again. But I've realized that walking away would be the easier choice in some ways. Staying, committing to this new path together, that's actually the braver decision." Stephen nodded solemnly. "I promise you won't regret giving us this chance. I'm not the same man I was before, and I never want to be that person again. And I'm not the same woman," Rachel added. "I've found a strength in myself I didn't know I had, a clarity about what I need and what I won't compromise on." Stephen reached across the space between them, offering his hand palm up. An invitation, not a demand. After a moment's hesitation, Rachel placed her hand in his. "So," he said softly, "does this mean I'm coming home? To our room?" Rachel considered the question. "Not tonight," she decided, "but soon. Let's take this one step at a time." They sat together in comfortable silence, hands still joined, the simple connection speaking volumes that words couldn't express. After a while, Rachel remembered the envelopes Dr. Wright had given them. "Should we open those now?" she suggested. They retrieved the envelopes from their respective bags and returned to the sofa. Inside each was a sheet of paper with a single question printed at the top, followed by blank space. "What will you do differently tomorrow that you didn't do today?" They looked at each other, understanding the deeper meaning behind the seemingly simple prompt. This was about active choice, about consciously creating their future together one day at a time. Without discussion, they each took a pen and began to write their answers. Rachel's pen moved steadily across the page. "Tomorrow, I will share a fear instead of protecting him from it. I will ask for what I need instead of hoping he'll guess. I will choose trust as an action, not just wait for it as a feeling. When they finished writing, they exchanged papers without being asked, each reading the other's commitments for the day to come. Stephen's eyes grew damp as he read Rachel's words, and she felt her own throat tighten seeing what he had written. Tomorrow, I will listen without defensiveness. I will speak truth without fear. I will earn her trust through consistent actions, not just promises. I will remember that love is a choice I make every day. I think we're going to be okay, Rachel said softly, and was surprised to realize she truly believed it. The holidays approached with a tentative new warmth between them. They decorated the house together, hung stockings, and planned Laurie's visit with a united front that felt both familiar and freshly intentional. When Laurie called to check in, Rachel was able to tell her with genuine certainty that things were improving. "Are you sure, Mom?" Laurie asked, the concern evident in her voice even over the phone. "You're not just saying that for my benefit?" "I'm sure," Rachel confirmed. "It's not perfect, and we're still working through things, but we're in a much better place. We're both committed to making this work." "And you're happy?" Laurie pressed. "Truly happy? Not just settling?" Rachel considered the question, remembering the conversation she and Stephen had had at the Botanical Gardens months ago. "I'm finding my way back to happiness," she said honestly. "And it's a different kind of happiness than before. Deeper, more mindful." 2 days before Christmas, Stephen moved back into their bedroom. The transition was marked by both significance and simplicity. No grand gestures, just his toiletries returning to the master bathroom, his clothes hanging once more beside hers in the closet. That night, they lay side by side, the familiar contours of each other's bodies both known and somehow new. "It feels strange," Rachel admitted in the darkness. "Good strange, but still strange." "I know what you mean," Stephen replied. "Like coming home to a place you've missed, but finding it's been redecorated while you were gone." She smiled at the aptness of the metaphor. "Exactly." His hand found hers beneath the covers. "Thank you," he said softly, "for this second chance. I won't waste it." "I know," she said, and realized she did know. Not with blind faith, but with the clear-eyed confidence that came from watching him consistently choose growth, choose honesty, choose her, day after day for months. Christmas morning arrived with swirling snow and the familiar excitement that even adults couldn't quite suppress. Laurie was coming for Christmas dinner, but the morning was just for them, a quiet celebration before the festive chaos. They exchanged simple gifts by the tree, a book Rachel had mentioned wanting to read, a new wallet to replace Stephen's worn one, practical items elevated by the thoughtfulness behind them. The final gift was a small box from Stephen to Rachel. "This is something extra," he explained as she unwrapped it. "Something to mark where we are now." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, 2 intertwined circles. "It's beautiful," Rachel said, lifting it from the box. "The jeweler called it an eternity knot," Stephen explained. "It symbolizes a bond that can be tested but never broken." He hesitated. "I thought it was fitting." Rachel extended her wrist, allowing him to fasten the bracelet. The silver felt cool against her skin, the weight of it slight but noticeable, a tangible reminder of their renewed commitment. "Thank you," she said, leaning forward to kiss him softly. "Not just for this, but for everything these past months, for doing the work, even when it was painful. We did it together," Stephen reminded her, "and we'll keep doing it, day by day." Later that evening, after a wonderful Christmas dinner with Laurie, who had noticed the positive change in her parents' relationship immediately, Rachel stood in the kitchen putting away leftovers while Stephen and Laurie chatted in the living room. She could hear their laughter, the ease between them restored after the initial tension of Laurie's anger had dissipated. Rachel paused, her hands stilling on the container of mashed potatoes she was about to place in the refrigerator. She took in the moment fully, the warmth of the kitchen, the sounds of her family's voices, the weight of the silver bracelet on her wrist, the sense of rightness that had gradually returned to her life. The broken places were healing, just as Melissa had described, becoming stronger at the mended points than they had been before. Not because the fracture had never happened, but because they had faced it honestly, treated it properly, and given it the time needed to rebuild. She thought of that couple she had watched hanging Christmas lights in the cold morning sunshine, their movements revealing the deep understanding that came from weathering life's storms together. Perhaps someday someone would look at her and Stephen the same way, not as a perfect couple, but as two people who had chosen each other again and again, especially when it was hardest to do so. "Need any help in there?" Stephen called from the living room. "Actually, yes," Rachel answered, smiling to herself. "Come help me with these containers." As he joined her in the kitchen, their hands brushed while reaching for the same lid. Once, such casual contact had been taken for granted. Now, it felt like a gift, simple but precious. Not the breathless excitement of new love, but something deeper and more enduring. A choice made daily, with eyes wide open. Rachel caught Stephen's gaze and held it, communicating without words all that remained in her heart. The lingering hurt, yes, but also the growing hope, the deepening trust, the renewed commitment. He nodded slightly, understanding. This was their new beginning, not a return to what was, but a step forward into what could be, together. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.